Yeah. Okay, can you hear me now?
No.
No? Can you hear me now?
You're gonna have to talk louder, man, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better, thank you.
Okay, I'll just hold the mic. Anyways, this is my presentation on my tour in Vietnam in 1968. First, I'd like to go back to last month, where I did the run for the wall and I showed my motorcycle and the trailer that I pulled. This year, I'm thinking about upgrading that. How would that be, Harlan? Can you get rid of this side? Anyway, my military career started back in 1962. I went to a military college in Vietnam, or in Norwich University in Vermont. And as a junior in advanced ROTC, I knew I'd get a commission in the Army. What I did not know is that it would be in tanks. And I really didn't think it'd be a lot of fun driving a tank, and it wasn't really a good career move. So I applied for flight training my senior year, and eventually got a commission out of college, went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, spent 4 months learning how to get these tanks stuck in the mud and how to pull them out of the mud, and artillery call for fire and all kinds of stuff. Eventually, we got orders for flight school, and this is where I started learning to fly, in this Hughes TH-55. Flight school was divided up between two groups. Half of us flew the Hughes 55, half flew the Hiller. Basically, they're all the same, except the Hughes had 8 radiator fan hoses that drove the transmission rather than the regular transmission. But this is what it looks like in the cockpit. And, oops, that's the helipad. This is what's called a collective. And when you're learning to fly a helicopter, you have to learn to coordinate all of these controls at one time. Probably the hardest thing I ever learned. But anyways, to go up, they never didn't check me out on this very well. So with a collective, you raise the collective, the aircraft descends, things on the ground get smaller. As you raise the collective, the engine RPM, rotor RPM decrease, so you have to use the motorcycle throttle here to increase engine RPM. And then as you raise the collective also, the nose pitches downward, so you have to, oh, this is ridiculous. Okay, this is harder than learning to hover. Oh, I know what you do. Well, I'm using my thumb and it's too fat. So anyways, as you raise the collective, the aircraft climbs, the nose pitches down, and you have to put in forward cyclic. And then as you raise the collective also, the nose yaws to the right, so you have to put in the left pedal. And then when you descend, you lower the collective. Now you got to close the throttle just a little bit to keep from overspeeding. And the nose drops, so you got to pull back on the cyclic just a little bit. And then you got to put in right pedal. And you got to do all this all at one time. And I was starting in this field with a big tree down there. And that tree seemed to have magnets in it. It just pulled me right up into the tree. And the instructor takes me back. Try again, Lieutenant. So eventually we learned to hover. We spent 4 months in Texas flying into different stage fields, learning how to do all the emergency procedures and a little bit of tactical flying. This is a helipad. Those are all TH-13 helicopters. We got another helipad just as big with the TH-55s. After 4 months of flying in Texas, we went to Alabama, where we learned to fly the Bell 47 solely by reference to instruments. Never did actually fly the helicopter. The instructor takes off, and we put on a view limiting device, and then we're flying on instruments or trying to figure out how to do it. After 2 months of instrument training, we finally get to fly the Huey with the big turbine engine. The tire you see here in front of the Huey, that was in all of our little stage fields where we practiced. You always had to make the approach directly to the tire. And after 2 months of that, we did have to run an escape and evasion course at Fort Rucker. So they take us out at night, teach us how to kill a rattlesnake or a rabbit and a chicken, have dinner. Then we walk through the woods all night to a pickup point. I got to run the escape and evasion twice because they caught me commandeering a Jeep to get me to the finish line. Oh, that was my 2 weekends in a row. Finally, we get to Vietnam. Initially, after flight school, we got 30 days leave, went home, then we flew to Travis Air Force Base, this friend of mine from college, and I, with the idea we're going straight to Vietnam. But then there was some kind of celebration going on for the New Year's, and we got delayed for a couple days. Finally, we get to Vietnam. We land at Ben Hoa about 10 o'clock at night, get off the airplane, hot, stinky, smelly, take a bus ride over to Long Binh, where I stayed a couple days waiting for my unit assignment. And I got a picture in my mind of my college buddy that went over with me sitting on the bus. He was going up to 11th Armored Cav at Black Horse, and I thought, he looks so sad, he looks so worried, and I wondered if I'd ever see him again. Fortunately, he did make it home. So I got my unit assignment, went from Long Binh over to Xi'an, which is about 30 miles south of Saigon, where our squadron was located. Squadron commander says, welcome to the unit. You're assigned to the unit back at Long Binh. So back to Long Binh I go. I get into Long Binh, I see a friend of mine from college who said, if you want to fly a lot, get in the scout platoon, because the guns and slicks don't do much flying. So I got into the scout platoon, and I went back to Xi'an for the transition into the Loach. And this is what I flew for the first 4 or 5 months in Vietnam. This is a picture of Nguyen Ba Dinh. It's about 3,200 foot high mountain up by Cu Chi, between Cu Chi and Tay Ninh. The Special Forces owned the top of the mountain, and the VC owned everything inside of the mountain. We never did get them out of it. But the Loach, well, first off, Nguyen Ba Dinh, this is what it looks like now. There's 2 different chairlifts to get you up to the top. And they've got a temple, they've got an amusement park on top, just to show you the difference of how Vietnam has progressed since we left there a long time ago. A lot of Loaches got shot down. It looks like about 50% of them didn't make it back to the States. And this is the Loach, shows the cockpit with the controls, M60, minigun out here, 7.62, box of ammo. I flew the right seat, had an observer, enlisted man with a M60, and he'd navigate for me, reading the maps. My crew chief sat in the right seat. He had an M16 and a box of grenades at his feet, high explosive, Willie Pete, and smoke grenades. And we'd hover around the stream beds and waterways, around fire support bases for just doing security, drop smoke if we find a target, and then we call in the gunships if it was a worthwhile target. That's the minigun, 2,000, 4,000 rounds per minute. Yeah. So at one time I was appointed or promoted, whatever, assigned to be the unit payroll officer. I had to fly a Loach around 3 Corps to a couple of different places. This is a flight Long Binh up to, I didn't fly that one, I was flying a helicopter. But I went from Long Binh to Tay Ninh, and there's a place called the Hobo Woods, and I asked the controller if I could cut through the Hobo Woods to save some flight time. And he said, well, there's no artillery, no bombs, nothing. So I go across the Michelin tire plantation and look out my right window. This is what I saw. there was a B-52 strike going on. And when I told the controlling agency about it, they said, well, can you go do a bomb damage assessment? Let's see what they did. So I fly in after the bomb stopped dropping. I fly into that area, and all I see is footprints. There's no bodies. There's nothing in there. Everybody had come out of the tunnels and scattered once the bomb stopped dropping. So after flying Loach, I got transferred over to a different troop, Bravo troop in Zion again, and they made me a platoon leader of the Slick platoon. This is a typical LZ, Slicks going in, dropping off the infantry, and I realized on my first time on the insertion short final, I don't have any guns at my disposal. I got a crew chief with M60, I've got a door gunner with the M60, I don't have any guns. And I didn't feel too good about that, but there we go. 7,000 Hueys delivered, 3,300 were destroyed, and 2,400 crew members and pilots. This is a cockpit of the Huey. You see, on the left-hand side, not a lot of instrumentation because the more experienced pilot flies in the left seat. Peter pilot, or the new guy, FNG, whatever you call him, co-pilot, he's in the right, he's got all the instruments. There's the collective again, but we got a governor in here, field control unit, so we don't have to worry about RPM. The radio console is down here. This aircraft has dual ASH receivers. Those are ashtrays. It was sometime in the mid-1990s we finally got a directive, no smoking in Army aircraft. That's just a typical rendition of the gunship up top, laying down suppressive fire while the Slicks drop off the troops. There's a Charlie model gunship. So we had Alpha, Bravo, Charlie models, Delta models, and then a bigger engine became the hotel model of the Huey. And so the Charlie model gunship is leading in the medevac helicopter right behind him. There's a typical door gunner. He's got smoke grenades and the M60 machine gun. This guy's got a minigun. He's on a gunship. Has a 19-shot rocket pod down below. We'll see some more of those on the Cobra. And there's the Hueys going off into the evening flying, which leads me into, I got transferred. I came back from my second day of flying Slicks and no guns at my disposal. And they had a DEROS swap. And they said, we need one of the pilots to go over to Benoit to be a gunship pilot. I volunteered right away. And when I got over to Benoit Air Base, the 334th Armed Helicopter Company, all my platoon did was fly the Firefly mission. So I flew the high ship. I did not have a 50 cal gun in mind, just rockets and a minigun. And we had a Huey that would fly 300 foot, 60 knots, and he had the discarded 50 cal weapons from the Navy. Army did not have a 50 cal gun. We used to go out to the, wherever the Navy threw away their weapons when they were burned out, we'd grab them. And so the Firefly aircraft flies down the waterways, flies around fire support bases. A lot of time we're flying around the Cambodian border and the Parrot's Beak. And my wingman is down here in the Charlie model, no lights on, but his guns are in the hot position. So if a target shows up in the light of the Firefly or the light ship, he just rolls right in and starts shooting. I would break off and become his wingman. This is what most of the aircraft look like on Firefly, is 7 C-130 landing lights on a frame, and got a small rocket pod on this one. The ones that we used, there's a discarded 50 cal from the Navy. We actually had to put a 1-inch thick steel pad underneath that gun because The first time we were firing 50 cals, it kind of cracked the floorboards. This is a Charlie model gunship. He's just fired off 2 pair of rockets, which means 8 rockets are going downrange. This guy's on a beer run. He's got a Coors. There's another picture on the internet. It was a Budweiser. I did not find one with Bud Light. So a lot of times my mission would end about 5 in the morning, maybe 6 in the morning. We're headed back from around Tainin, flying back to Benoit. Adrian Kromeyer comes on the radio every morning, 6 a.m. with "Good morning, Vietnam." Then we hear the news of the day. So one day I'm out there supporting the Marines south of Tainin, or one night rather, in the Charlie model gunship, and we're rolling in on targets, and the Charlie model, you fly along at 90 knots and then pitch up and dissipate airspeed to about 60, pitch over and roll in on the gun run, and real soon you're hitting 90 knots and you got to break off, and it shakes and vibrates as it goes around and set up for another gun run. And it wasn't all that accurate. So anyways, one night I'm out there supporting the Marines. The very next night, I got word, I've got a new warrant officer, I got a new Cobra, and we went out flying in the Cobra for the first time. And sure as heck, the Marines called me again to come help them out in the firefight. And so with the Cobra, we're flying along at 90 knots, pitch up to 60, and you roll in and you stay in that diving gun run until you hit about 120 knots. And then you can break off. And because of its design, it is so much more accurate, and we kept firing the rockets, the minigun, grenade launcher, and finally he says, "What are you flying tonight?" I said, "I got a brand new Cobra." So that's only 30% of the Cobras got shot down over there. These are the guys that kept us flying. These are the maintenance guys. Gene, thank you for all your work. And they'd work in the morning, they work at night. Pilots are in the officers club. The guys are still out there working on our helicopters. This is the back seat of the Cobra. And this is the front seat. These are the controls. You sit there in the front seat. The back seat was just like the Huey, with a big sight like from the collective. The front seat of the Cobra, you're sitting there with like this, with just really small, short controls. Became a whole different control touch flying the Cobra. And this is a sight that was tied into the turret, so wherever you move the sight, the turret would follow. And that's the turret. We got the minigun on the left-hand side, carries 4,000 rounds in the ammo bay compartment. This is a 40-millimeter grenade launcher, carried 400 rounds. And both were a lot of fun to fire. This is a minigun firing at a high speed. Every 5th bullet is a red tracer. So no idea, but it's just amazing to watch those things firing at nighttime. There's a pilot, no idea who he is, but we wore a chicken plate underneath our survival vest. We've got this sliding partition. This is armor plated. Also a steel armor plate that we sat on. One thing that's nice in the Cobra, this is an air conditioning vent. So we actually, if you're flying daytime, as hot and muggy as it was, we had air conditioning. You see down here the 19 shot rocket pods, 2 of those. 38 rockets on each side, and a little bit of a wing stub there to hold on to, actually to support the rockets, but later on we had to hold on to it. There's one of the rockets coming out of the tube. Oh yeah. We had a fire mission one night. No, it wasn't a fire mission. We were out flying by the Tainin-Cambodian border, just south of Tainin. We started receiving some kind of fire that you could feel it exploding outside the Cobra. So I called for a artillery fire support base, gave them a fire mission, and tried to walk the rounds up towards the Canadian border. And they're very hesitant, obviously. And I knew the fire was coming from inside Cambodia. So after about 10 different fire missions, I finally said, add 10,000 fire for effect. And the comment was, fire mission complete, have a good evening. I still don't believe this war story, but we actually pitched up the Cobras to about a 45-degree deck angle, punched off a bunch of rockets. There's no way we could have hit them, but the firing stopped. And the next day, we had some people from the United Nations walking around company area wanting to know who was firing into Cambodia the night before. So here's some more mechanics sitting on the ammo bay door, and he's sitting on top of a rocket pod, and see this support wire here to hold the ammo. We end up with 4,000 rounds sitting on that before we slide the ammo box inside the compartment. This is my favorite Cobra. 76 rockets, and you got the minigun and the 40mm grenade launcher. I flew that at my last night. You'll see right here, 2 rockets going down. There's the exhaust blast from the rockets. Oh, I just forgot something. Going back to this picture here, with the Firefly, one night, my Cobra got shot down, or my wingman's Cobra. We're out around the Cambodian border, so I landed and picked him up. And the gunship circled, or the light ship circled around. I picked up the 2 pilots, one on each ammo bay door, and just flew out real slow and easy to the nearest fire support base. The next night, my light ship got shot down in the same area. I ended up with 2 pilots, one on each wing stub up here, 3 guys on each ammo bay door. So I carried out 8 of them that night over to the nearest fire support base, then went back and just hung out until the infantry got down there to recover the aircraft. So my last mission in Vietnam, we got into a firefight south of Tay Ninh again, and we expended all the rockets and all the minigun ammo. I went back into Tay Ninh, rearmed, refueled, came back out, finished shooting up whatever was left out there, went back in, rearmed again, and we ended up on station with all those 76 rockets. And this is my last flight. And I asked the young warrant officer in the back seat, there's a control panel back there that says selector, 1 pair, 2 pair, 4 pair. And then it says salvo. And I said, when you were in flight school, did they ever show you what salvo means? And he goes, no, sir. I said, well, let's put it in salvo and see what it does. This is stupid. Because that was the rocket blast of just 2 rockets going downrange. We sent a whole bunch of them down, and with the power of the motors, that nose kept tucking. I thought, oh my God, when is this ever gonna end? And we're both pulling back on the cyclic, trying to keep the nose up in the air, but we were young, dumb, and stupid. We did a lot of stupid things. There's a Huey with the Agent Orange drum in it. Unfortunately, we sprayed way too much of that stuff around. This is a monument in Arlington National Cemetery. It took the Vietnam Helicopter Pilots Association, I think, 7 years to get Congress to allow them to put this in the cemetery. There's a lot more than 54,000 people that got killed because of Vietnam. That's why I'm a big proponent of meeting up with the Agent Orange families when we go on Run for the Wall. That's the Freedom Bird, coming back from Vietnam. Okay, it's an SR-71, but the Freedom Bird was still in a hurry to get out of Vietnam airspace. So for all you veterans, welcome home from Vietnam. Thank you. Pardon me?
Questions?
I don't have any questions. Does anyone have questions? Where's that? Yes, sir. Oh, go ahead.
Very good, good. My question is, when you talk about the B-52 dropping its ordnance, and you said you saw no bodies, no casualties or anything, do you know why, or think you know the answer why there were no enemy down there that got whacked by the B-52s?
This was right around Cu Chi, which had the most numerous amount of tunnels. And every time I see someone who is a tunnel rat, I just gotta give them a hug. Yeah, they're just dug underground. And we didn't have the newer bombs that will go down and penetrate and then explode. And it was like Nui Ba Din. We never got them out of the mountain. We couldn't bomb them.
Just a little salt for the soup. I researched that because I wondered why the B-52s were not effective, if you want to call it that. And what I found was, according to snooping and pooping, the Russian trawlers in the South China Sea, when they saw the B-52s coming over, they would triangulate them in a trajectory, and then they would call to the enemy in Cambodia and give them the trajectory and the airspeed and the probable. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know, but that's what I read.
Wow.
So the Russian trawlers were the ones who were the spotters to let the enemy know when and where the expected arrival would be, and then so they got the hell out and went down the tunnels, like you said.
Wow. You would be a prime target.
Well, I was a prime target, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On one bunker complex that we hit, it was my job to blow the bunkers when we found them. I generally had several cases of C4 on my track. But on one of those bunkers, up on the inside, I found a 5-band Panasonic radio. The Kit Carson scout said that's what they listened for the B-52s on.
George.
Were you there during the Tet Offensive, and if so, did you see any action during Tet?
No, I was supposed to go over, but Tet started up just as we got to Travis Air Force Base. So they held us on the ground. And then by the time I got there, all the fun was over. But my unit that I joined, the 3rd of the 17th Alpha Troop, got a presidential unit citation for their action. They flew nonstop for 5 days. We were at Long Bin. And the problem with Tet, as I found out, I'd be flying around outside the perimeter, and you're looking at all these people, and they stop and look up at you. And other people would just keep on hoeing in the rice paddies. Those are the bad guys. And intelligence knew this was going to happen, but no one would believe them. So I missed out on the offensive.
I was on the YRB M21 in the middle of the Mekong River. Did you ever land on any of the vessels that were in the rivers? Like the USS Benoit or the YRB-21?
Okay, I forgot to mention that. On Thanksgiving evening, we were out flying around the waterway somewhere. I got a call from the Navy boat. And he says, 2-4, can you land on the back of our boat? Yeah. I looked at it, I said, yeah, I guess I can fit on there. So I landed, it's about 8 o'clock at night, and go to flight idle, open up the canopy, and out comes this Navy guy with a big flag. Was that you? It was a big turkey with all the trimmings. And so I thought, where the hell am I gonna put this in the front seat of a Cobra? So I managed to do it, had the back seat, take off, called my flight, and I said, our missions are canceled, we're headed back to Benoit. So we went back to home base, shut down. I was probably the only person that had a key to the officers club, other than the officers, whoever's in charge of us. But we used to get back from missions, I'd go into the officers club, we could have a few drinks, and we had turkey that night. And then Christmas Eve, the same thing happened again. The Navy called, asked me to land on their boat, and he brought me another turkey. Problem with Christmas Eve, prior to this, we have a guard frequency that we monitor in case there's a problem. Just go Mayday, 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 and everybody comes to help you. Well, there was so much BS going on the guard frequency. Finally, some guy says, hey look fellas, I know it's Christmas Eve, but what if Santa Claus is flying along in his sleigh and he has a reindeer failure and he's gonna do emergency landing? He can't make an emergency radio call. Can you shut up for a while? And then we went in and got our turkey. So were you giving me the turkey? Are you the gentleman? Well, if I could ever find him. Anyone else? Well, thank you very much.